The sky over Buenos Aires was the color of steel, a cheap kind scraped raw along the horizon. The factory's time clock was broken again, which meant Mauricio, the supervisor, called out the end of shift by voice, echoing over the din of tired machines. He had the kind of shout you couldn't ignore. Even so, most of us had finished stacking boxes 10 minutes ago, only pretending to hustle. I lingered, dry hands smoothing my blue overalls as everyone shuffled to the entrance. I pretended to tie my shoe, then stood quietly at the side, eyes stinging and sore from sleeplessness rather than sweat. Mauricio caught me, gave a little nod. I stepped out into the dawn spill that cut across Calwarns, the sun a thin slice sliding between blade-thin rooftops. I felt the layoff before anyone spoke to me. The engine of the city was always hungry. That morning it was my turn to be ground under. Mauricio stepped out behind me, lighting a cigarette against the breeze. He looked at the concrete, lips pressed tight. "Felipe," he said, "and that's all it took. They want to cut bodies before the next round. You've always slipped in late and, well," he tried to smile, apologetic. "Everyone says you draw on the clock, with those old notebooks." I did. Whenever a spreadsheet would flash on a supervisor's screen, I would see more than numbers, patterns, hidden rivers. I sketched the churn of data, little scribbles I kept near my ribs. He shrugged. "I didn't want to make it official inside. Here," he pressed an envelope into my hand. It was as thin as winter. I walked away, the machinery's clamor ebbing behind me. For one brief second, standing in the bite of the morning, I considered tossing the envelope into the gutter, but I didn't have the heart. There was nothing to do but ride the bus home. The rusted colectivo swayed past shuttered parts shops and sleeping dogs, the city's darkness thinning by degrees. I felt everyone's eyes were on my back, as if the shame was bright enough to see. Mama's apartment was asleep when I came in. She always said home should feel like exhalation, a sigh rather than a gasp. I closed the door softly so the latch wouldn't sing. My sister Lucilla sprawled on the pull-out couch, her hair a spill of wild curls. She woke blinking and saw the envelope in my fingers. "Did something happen?" she whispered. I could see the worry blooming in her face. I shook my head. "Just tired." Of course she knew, the envelope. I tucked it away, but the memory of her doubt followed me. I slipped into the cramped kitchen, breathing in the smell of last night's mint tea. That evening at dinner, I caught Papa's gaze across chipped bowls. He was a practical man, a former welder, the kind whose hands bore old heat. To him, dignity was found in honest labor. Numbers were for banks or crooks, certainly not for dreams. I shouldn't have said it, but I did. My voice was small but stubborn. "I'm not going back to the factory." There was clatter, Lucilla's fork. Mama's hand, a soft hush, touched the tablecloth. "And what will you do?" Papa asked. He didn't raise his voice, that made it worse. I forced myself to look at him. "I want to work with data, with art and information. Maybe visualizations. I want to make data into art." Silence pressed in thick as oil. In the old apartment, every emotion has shape. The radiators hissed, even the city's noise faded. "You draw pictures, so now you're an artist," he said it like a joke, sharp on the edges. "Felipe, numbers are for adding and subtracting. Get a real job, Hijo. Dreams are not for people like us." I remember my face heating, red and raw. "It's not a dream, it's work too. People pay for this in other countries. I can learn it online. There are projects and..." He raised his hand, not to strike but to stop the flood. "Do you hear yourself? People like us don't make a living from computers. You have no money, no connections. The only art in this family is a paycheck put on a wall." Lucilla shifted, biting her lip. Mama watched the conversation slip down the drain. I stood, chair scraping tile. "You'll see," I muttered. "One day you'll see." Words we only use when we have nothing else. I went outside, down the steps, out into the strange city. I walked till my shoes ached. Around me, the graffiti on Avenida Corrientes gleamed in the evening haze. A mosaic of colors, names, promises, and betrayals dripped from every wall. The months after the layoff passed like water through a slow leak. Days blurred, mornings filled with job applications, afternoons trawling internet cafes, nights hunting freelance gigs that paid in promises. I took odd jobs, unloading trucks, running laundry, anything to buy a little time. I hid my sketches in a battered folder, the corners soft and oily from my fingers. My family watched. Lucilla with secret hope, Papa with mounting fury. Every week he piled up newspaper ads, pushing them into my palm. Installations, security, good pension, Felipe. He was trying in his way. Most nights I pretended not to hear their whispered arguments. Mama pled for patience, Lucilla argued for me, but there was a sag to her voice too, like a coat worn too long. My rejection was public. At birthday parties, neighbors would smile and ask, "What are you up to now, Felipe?" I would tell the truth, and laughter would follow, always a little too loud. A data artist. What is that? Someone who paints spreadsheets? My uncle would cackle, and the men around him would slap their thighs. Someone once bought me a box of colored pencils as a joke. I left them on the table when I left. One evening, after the latest humiliation, Lucilla found me sitting out on the fire escape. The city was orange, neon bleeding across the sky. "Why don't you give up on them?" she asked quietly. "Because if I give up, it means they're right," my voice cracked, "and I can't let that happen." She sat beside me. "You have to make it somewhere else first, show them." I nodded. It was all I had left. It was an internet cafe and a slow Sunday when it happened. I replied to a call for virtual artists. Someone in Seattle needed a reimagined data visualization for a city art project. It paid in dollars. I sent my portfolio, nothing but scanned notebook scribbles and rough charts cobbled together with a pirated copy of Tableau. I spent all night waiting, fingers trembling over the keyboard. 3 days later, a reply, "Let's try a draft," the message said. "Impress me." I worked like a man possessed. I watched online tutorials in bursts, slept in fits, and lived on mate and bread. I turned municipal crime data into a cityscape of light and shadow, each neighborhood a rising spine, each incident a shift in hue. I'd never been to Seattle, but in my head it became Buenos Aires, a map twisted in color and pain. I submitted it, breathless. A week later I got paid, more money than a month on the line, and the message, "People loved it, do you want more work?" After that, jobs gathered like clouds, small at first, a campaign here, a startup there. Instagram DMs, emails from strangers, collaborations in English and Portuguese, and once by accident Polish. I learned to navigate the freelance sites, fighting off scams, sending portfolios late at night. The world began to open, strange and huge, every pixel a door. Most of it was invisible back home. My family kept waiting for normalcy, a hard hat, a badge, a supervisor's shout. They didn't understand Zoom calls or midnight deadlines, but the work kept coming, and each month the balance in my digital wallet crept higher. One day, out of nowhere, my first big public commission arrived, an invitation to build an interactive data mural for a tech conference funded by an international firm. I didn't hesitate, I accepted. For months I buried myself in code and drawing. I used the city's transit data, every bus route, every train mapped in living color. The mural would shift according to real-time flows, painted by the pulse of Buenos Aires itself. I wanted people to see the city as I saw it, alive, tangled, aching, and beautiful. When the day of unveiling came, I walked to the old convention hall on the edge of Palermo. A shifting crowd tilted between business suits and sneakers, each face a different city dweller, artists, coders, journalists, the simply curious. My mural, 20 meters wide, heart beating with light, took up the main wall. In the swirling crowd, I spotted a familiar face. Lucilla dragging Mama by the hand. There was tension in their posture, like they were bracing for disappointment. "Felipe," she cried, her eyes swept the mural, incredulous. "You made this." "I did," I said quietly. Something trembled inside me. Mama blinked, a hand at her lips. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Then unexpected, Papa appeared, his eyes darting, hands in his pockets like he was back in a welding booth. He stared at the projected city, then at me. "There are people taking photos of your name," he said finally, voice rough as gravel. He didn't smile, instead he looked at Mama, then at me. "Your name up there, you did this." I nodded, too full to speak. A journalist appeared, pressing a microphone to my lips. "What inspired you?" she asked in rapid Spanish. I glanced at Papa, at my family behind the rope, mouths open. My voice steadied as I spoke to the reporter, but I looked only at them. My family didn't understand at first. They thought it was impossible. But every dream comes from the city, from the struggles you live and the ones you overcome. This is for people like us. The next day, my name, Felipe Castaño, ran in the paper under a photo of the mural. For a moment, Buenos Aires saw me. Papa didn't say much. For a while, nothing changed. He still woke early, clattered around the kitchen, and cursed at the cost of groceries. But there was something different. He would show the newspaper, creased and coffee-stained, to neighbors on the landing. When my second commission rolled in, a permanent installation in a downtown bank lobby, I used my first real check to buy a tall, spindly plant for Mama. She wept for 10 minutes. Lucilla celebrated by dancing barefoot in the kitchen, swinging her little cousin around. I stood in the middle, heart sore but grateful. News spread faster than the subway at rush hour. Uncles stopped cracking jokes. Old friends from the factory called with sudden congratulations, voices wobbly with envy and pride. Even Mauricio, graying now, semi-retired, showed up at the unveiling. He stood beside me surveying the shifting mural. They say the new boss likes your work, he grinned. All the engineers talk about you now. Seems you're the best comeback the factory never had. I laughed, tension evaporating. For once there was no bitterness in his voice. The city changed too, at least for me. Where before the cafes and bookshops felt like closed circles, now they opened with possibility. Designers asked for collaboration, students emailed for advice. Sometimes I wandered through San Telmo or Recolta at sunset, sketchbook in hand, breathing the heavy perfume of jacarandas. Yet I still returned every Sunday for dinner. My family never fully believed it. Mama worried about taxes. Lucilla joked about managing my appointments. Papa said little, but started leaving clippings from the business section on my desk. One day, after dinner, he found me on the balcony watching traffic flow. He sat next to me, creaking the old plastic chair. I never understood what you saw in those numbers, he said, voice low. I wanted to protect you. We work with our hands because it's solid. We know where we stand. I waited, unsure what to say. He continued, but I see people pointing at your wall, teachers bringing students. Maybe you were right to try. Maybe I was too scared. We sat in silence, watching the city spark with light. Sometimes dreams do look ridiculous before they become real. Yet when the proof stands tall before your doubters, when the city glows with your stubbornness, you realize the struggle was not just for yourself. It was to light the way for those behind you and for those who never thought to try. In the city of iron and light, I found a place for my work, and at last for myself. And still, every Sunday I come home. I bring new stories and sketches, and the family gathers around, pretending just a little as if none of it had ever been in doubt.